Trump has revoked Kamala Harris' Secret Service detail extended by Biden, which is, some real petty shit from
President
Trump,
Biden extended.
I don't know how long the VP Secret Service is supposed to go on for. I know like presidents get a lifetime. I don't think that VPs get lifetime. I think there's a limit to it.
Harris's protective detail for an additional year on top of the 6 months she's required to have by law. Now the president's saying they can terminate that effective September 1st. How significant is that?
Yeah, it is significant. The vice president
It's so funny that this government is like hemorrhaging money in all of the dumbest sides, but then we'll turn around and be like, we have to cut corners here. That's why we're doing this. And it's like, that's not the reason why you're doing this. You're doing this because you want to be petty. And I don't necessarily care one way or another. Like, this isn't something that I'm going to, this is not going to be the thing that I finally criticize Trump on, right? Like, I don't care that much, but it's just typical Trump, petty ass.
Vice president is about to do a very big book tour in just a couple of weeks that has her traveling around the country. This is very highly publicized. A spokesperson for the former vice president says simply that Harris is grateful to the U.S. Secret Service for their professionalism, dedication, and unwavering commitment to safety. Now, we do know that former President Biden had extended Harris's protection for an additional 12 months. That's on top of the 6 months that she was given by law because she is a former vice president. So that would have been a year and a half. That will now be cut short. That ends on September 1st, based on this memo that President Trump has sent to the Secretary of Homeland Security, saying that they are now authorized to end any security-related procedures as it comes to former Vice President Harris. And Diane, just have to mention that this is the latest in a list of people that the president has now canceled security protections for. It was a couple months ago that he did this for the Biden children, for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, his one-time national security advisor.
Outside the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, more than a clapping out for departing colleagues, a very public show of solidarity against the Trump administration. Senior leaders resigning in protest at the dismissal of their boss on what they say are political grounds.
And what makes us great at CDC is following the science. And so let's get the politics out of public health.
Look at the devastation that's happening to our staff, our campus, the programs. We won't forget you. We're just now going to really advocate for the great work you all do.
Susan Menares was only weeks into her job as CDC director when she was fired on Wednesday, the White House saying she was not aligned with President Donald Trump's mission to make America healthy again. But it was a clash with Trump's Secretary for Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that sealed her fate. A former colleague who spoke to Menares on Wednesday said she claimed Kennedy had asked her to act illegally by firing officials without cause and unscientifically by endorsing recommendations on vaccines that she didn't believe were based on evidence. Kennedy says he won't talk about individual personnel matters.
There's a lot of trouble at CDC, and it's going to require getting rid of some people over the long term in order for us to change the institutional culture and bring back pride and self-esteem and make that agency the stellar agency that it's always been. I'm very confident in the political staff that we have down there now that they're going to be able to accomplish that.
But it is the political element that worries senior health professionals, among them one of Menares' predecessors in the job.
This is unprecedented. There has never been a CDC director fired. And it appears that she was fired for standing up for saying things that are true and refusing to rubber stamp things that are putting ideology into the recommendations of what vaccines our kids should get.
Kennedy has long been a critic of widespread vaccination. This week, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, now headed by a Kennedy ally, issued revised guidelines targeting the latest COVID-19 vaccines, now recommended only for those over 65 or with certain pre-existing medical conditions, instead of the previous yearly jab for children as young as 6 months and up. Over the summer, Kennedy also dismissed the serving members of the ACIP, the body that advises on vaccination practices, replacing them with a more vaccine-skeptic panel, due to meet for the first time next month. Menares was quizzed about the move at her Senate confirmation hearing in June.
The members of the ACIP do need to go through a thorough ethics review before they are allowed to participate in those critical meetings.
What will you do if the committee votes to remove vaccines from the vaccine schedule or to not approve new ones in opposition to clear established science?
So I will be looking at how the ACIP members are able to evaluate this complex scientific information.
This week, Kennedy gave a window into his own scientific method for discerning childhood health.
I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today, as I walk down the street, and I see these kids that are just overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, with inflammation. You can tell from their faces, from their body movements, and from their lack of social connection. And I know that that's...
We watched this yesterday. This man is such a freak. And it's like, it's the most says you moment I've ever encountered. Dog, what do you mean? They look like husks. They look abnormal. They look like they're not real humans. Like, they don't look the way humans are supposed to. Human children are supposed to look. You don't look like a human. You look like a Fallout ghoul, man. It's just mind-boggling to me. The looked at this guy and we're like, that's a beacon of health. Okay? God, we are such a stupid country. I swear to God. I know that Americans don't, technically have that much of a say in who gets to be the HHS secretary. But, they were still advocating for this guy. They were looking at this guy who is like a walking corpse. And they were like, this guy who is a walking corpse, he actually is a beacon of health. And also, obviously, the aesthetics of this shit don't matter, right? Because they love presenting I forget, there was the trans lady that was like the head of the CDC or something, I forget. And everyone's like, oh, you think she's healthy? And it's like, dude, this is her specific field. It don't matter that she's trans. So what's crazy is RFK Jr. doesn't even fit the mold of health, and also simultaneously has no active reliable experience in the field at all, and his only experience is the exact opposite of what the scientific studies are saying. It's so crazy. He don't look the part, he don't sound the part, he just sucks. Yeah, and now the guy that they have at the CDC is like Peter Thiel's guy, for the record, which is crazy. And this Jim O'Neill, I was listening to this morning, has advocated for some of the most insane He wants to sell organs, chat. The current head of the CDC has in the past said we should actually do a pay per organ scheme so that we can, we can have more organs. We can have more organs in circulation. No, not the instrument, dude. Organs, like you should be able to donate organs for money is what he's saying. That's just cyberpunk, dude. That right there is unironically that you see bad guys push for in dystopias in movies. The tech bro takeover of the U.S. continues while the CDC employees clap out their principal leaders who resigned. Trump swears in a 2-decade Peter Thiel advisor to lead the CDC, says Capitol Hunters. Thiel's Palantir already has all your data. He controls your vice president. Now he controls your public health, too. No one is even trying to hide the Thiel takeover anymore. Jim O'Neill's been a key Thiel lieutenant for nearly 20 years. He ran the Thiel Foundation, Thiel's Clarium Capital, and Mithril Capital, the one that employed J.D. Vance, by the way, Mithril Capital. Jim O'Neill is not just a Thiel lieutenant. He's a true acolyte, pushing all Peter's fruitcake ideas, building government-free floating cities, achieving eternal life, getting kids to drop out of college. And he says drug safety testing is for wimps. The new head of the CDC is not a doctor or scientist. He is a humanities major who caught Peter Thiel's eye and spent 2 decades fluffing his Mad King dreams. O'Neill ran Clarium Capital into the ground and lost 90% of his value, but Peter kept him on. Nothing in Jim O'Neill's history prepares him to safeguard our public health. What he's prepared to do is impose Peter Thiel's visions. And if Trump fades and Thiel's protege, J.D. Vance, takes the presidency, Thiel will own the government bottom to top. Why does this account cover Peter Thiel? Because Thiel had groomed the alt-right influencers who brought the crowds to the Capitol on January 6, 2021. He wanted power then and didn't get it. Now he's taking it. People need to see the danger and fight back. It is so nutty, dude. It is so nutty. Give me some more background on this guy if you have some. Okay? Public Citizen writes, Jim O'Neill, unfit to be the number 2 healthcare leader in America. This is before he became the number 1 healthcare leader in America. Okay, this is from back when he was unfit to be number 2. Or wait, is this from, or is this recent? Why doesn't it have a date on it? God damn it. Donald Trump's nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services has rightly drawn widespread attention and concern, but it's important that Trump's dangerous choice to serve in the second highest HHS seat as Deputy Secretary not to be overshadowed, Jim O'Neill. Okay? O'Neill served in the HHS in the George W. Bush administration, eventually becoming Principal Associate Deputy Secretary. Since then, O'Neill has primarily spent his career running investment funds with and for Peter Thiel. From 2012 to 2019, he served as Managing Director of Mithril Capital Management, once again, co-founded by Peter Thiel, and also where J.D. Vance worked. A venture capital co-founded by Peter Thiel that funds businesses like Palantir and Helion Energy. Before that, he was Managing Director of Clarium Capital, another Thiel-led hedge fund. Oh, is this the one? I think this is it, yeah.
For me, the most potent and vivid. Should organ transplantation be encouraged or discouraged? In a free market, recipients of...
This is at the Seasteading Institute. These guys are psychos, okay? Like, these are the people we laughed at. Like, haha, look at these stupid billionaires. They want to build, like, fake mini nations that don't have to abide by rules and regulation, like BioShock, okay? These guys used to fantasize about BioShock. Now they run the country, bro. Like, directly. Not even indirectly, in the way that they used to indirectly run the country is by lobbying and getting, like, closed-door meetings with people in positions of power, writing legislation, blah, 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 blah. Now they're just, like, straight up put their tentacles directly into the asshole of the capital.
Life-saving organ transplants, or their insurers or other benefactors, would be allowed to compensate their donors, creating incentive for more people to save more lives.
Libertarians are so terrifying, especially when they, like, get some kind of power. They are shockingly inhumane. Like, he is unironically advocating for the Rothbardian nightmare of a marketplace for organs, okay? I don't think we need to try to figure out why that doesn't exist right now, right? And by the way, it doesn't stop there. These guys want to do marketplace of children. That's not a joke. That is a real thing that Rothbard, one of these anarcho-capitalist libertarian thinkers, actively advocated for. Child marketplace, okay? That's not a joke. Parents should be able to sell their children to the highest donor because the highest donor is going to be the best caretaker, is unironically an argument that people have made.
In a cartelized system, people continue to die far too early and needlessly. In America's cartelized system, 11 people every day.
Cartelized system. There's a monopoly on organ donations. Ironically enough, the monopoly on organ donations is just the regulatory control so that there isn't a marketplace for the highest bidder. And instead, it's dished out by who needs it the fastest. And even then, there are ways around that, obviously, that rich people consistently engage with. Like, and the extraction of organs come from voluntary organ donations when people pass away. Instead of people literally getting a financial incentive to donate their organs and maybe even die in the process. What are we doing? Oh my God. This is capitalist eugenics through and through. Well, the working poor have reliable body parts that we could take. Amazing. Amazing that the Republicans don't realize that these are the people that are backing the party right now, by the way. These people who kept saying, like, the World Economic Forum wants me to be a homosexual, I will not do it, went and voted for the guy who is telling them, you're going to eat the bugs, you're going to like it, you will own nothing, we will do mass surveillance around the clock with AI, like, you know, with Israeli, with Israeli-backed AI. And if you, God forbid, say something that the administration doesn't like, you're going to jail. Maybe we'll actually pay you for the organs that we take from your body after. Amazing. Are you ready for the New World Order types? Unironically, are pushing for the New World Order.
Die while waiting for a kidney that could save their life. And there are plenty of healthy spare kidneys walking around, unused.
I'm sorry. Like, That's the head of the CDC now. Wait, we got to run it back. You have to hear it again.
Life. And there are plenty of healthy spare kidneys walking around, unused.
Yeah. Plenty of healthy people with a spare kidney walking around unused. They should be able to sell it. Not only is our new acting director of the CDC not a scientist, but he also has deep ties to Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's techno-utopia movement. One epidemiologist compared Jim O'Neill's appointment to making Elon Musk the head of the FAA. During Trump's first administration, O'Neill was rumored to be under consideration for the lead of the FDA. This set off warning bells among healthcare watchdogs, as O'Neill had given a talk in 2014 in which he advocated for pushing drugs onto the market without assessing whether or not they work. Let people start using them at their own risk, he argued. Let's prove efficacy after they've been legalized. What I never understand about these guys is that that's how it used to be. There is a reason why that's not how it is now. And the reason is because people died, bro. That's the whole point. There is a reason why we set these rules, man. What the are we doing? Like, dude, this is so dumb. Like, being a libertarian must be awesome, okay? Because you just run around being like, every rule that was written with blood, okay, is actually bad and wrong, and we should revert back to a time when those rules didn't exist that made those rules an inevitability because people died. That's why, like, the anti-OSHA advocates are so stupid. Like, all of that regulation exists not so that people can be annoying. It exists because it was a necessity. Oh, my God. At the time, Public Citizen compared O'Neill's proposal to the 19th century snake oil salesman who fooled people into purchasing ineffective products. The idea of regulating medicines based only on safety is even worse than it sounds. It's common sense that big pharma should not be permitted to sell drugs and devices that don't work. But when it comes to drugs, there's no such thing as a safe product divorced from efficacy. Drug products all have side effects, and the relevant issue is their risk profile. Do the benefits justify the risks? What does it mean to talk about a safe chemotherapy, for example? Whether it should be granted marketing or approval, and the scope of that approval can only be understood in the context of both its dangers and benefits to others. In his previous stint at HHS, awesome, amazing. During the George W. Bush administration, O'Neill proposed FDA regulation of companies that use algorithms to perform laboratory tests such as 23andMe DNA testing. A decade after he made this remark, it's clear how dangerous such a concept is. With the development and proliferation of artificial intelligence, algorithms are omnipresent in the practice of medicine, including in diagnostic tools, medical devices, AI assistants to doctors, and personalized medicine. This is a major part of their advocacy, bro. They literally just want to replace every part of the labor force, including highly specialized fields like healthcare, like doctors, with AI. O'Neill is a longevity guy and is buddies with Brian Johnson, and he has supported the libertarian idea of creating a new geographic zone, possibly at sea, the Seasteading Institute, in which residents can live by their own rules, including notably permissive regulatory regimes for new drugs and therapies. The healthiest societies in 2030 will most likely be on the sea, O'Neill told an audience at the Seasteading Institute conference in 2009. He talked up the benefits of a free market for health, saying that seasteads could offer improved healthcare and serve as medical tourism hubs. The last best hope for freedom is on the sea. This is where he also talked about the marketplace of organs. Plenty of people walking around with organs connected to their bodies without, getting paid for that organ to be extracted out of their bodies, unused. How dare you walk around with an organ unused? A wealthy person could use it. Oh my God. O'Neill is also, AI. This is not to mention AI is used throughout the healthcare system, including potentially pernicious use by private insurers to make medical authorization decisions. And the FDA and other parts of the HHS do not regulate AI and algorithms, or do so with a light touch. Rampant consumer abuses and preventable injuries, death, and suffering are certain to follow. Remember, they already love United Healthcare utilizing AI to deny people coverage, okay? So get used to more of that. Fantastic. It's plausible deniability. It's cheaper than a doctor. Awesome. Who cares? You can pay off some medical malpractice suits in the process, but ultimately, it's good for profits. O'Neill has also indicated that people should be free to sell their organs, an exploitative and unethical practice. Just come on, man. Overall, O'Neill has indicated that healthcare should be run as a free market, believing that less regulatory protection would not harm patients, but rather allow innovation. He has blamed suffering under the current healthcare system not on corporate greed and a lack of proper access, but on a lack of sufficiently free market. Yeah, the freer the market is the freer the people, baby. For one thing, it suggests healthcare is a commodity and that people should get what they can pay for, and for only what they can pay for. It rejects the moral common sense, a widely held view that healthcare is a right. Second, it ignores the fact that most healthcare decisions are not, or at least should not be, discretionary. When people have a medical emergency, they need care, whatever the price. It is an inelastic demand good. This is precisely the reason why there has to be heavy government intervention or directly an eradication of the profit incentive. Because once again, if you don't have healthcare, you die. And therefore, there's no amount of money you won't pay for that process. And of course, the healthcare industry knows this. And that's why in a place like the United States of America, there's already a late-stage capitalist dystopia. They have farmed out this process and paywalled it to the best of their ability. Amazing. But hey, guess what? If you're poor and are going to die because you can't pay for your health care, then at least you can buy a PlayStation 5 before you go out by selling a bunch of your organs. What do you think this is for? Who do you think this will benefit? Not you, okay? Definitely not you. In the absence of regulatory controls, third, it ignores the fact that the government is the largest payer of medical care by far, or worse, may imply that the government should stop paying for medical care through Medicare, the Veterans Administration, and Medicaid, among other programs. Of course, there's conflicts of interest. Many of O'Neill's investments, boards, positions, and career choices have resulted in ties to healthcare-related companies that could pose conflicts of interest if he joins the HHS. Well, he's not even joining the HHS. He's already putting his fingers directly in the asshole of the CDC, so that's fantastic. Oh no, guys, it's fine. It's okay. We're saved. Susan Collins is extremely alarmed. Thank God. I was worried. At this point, she must be joking, right? Like when she says this, she knows it's a meme, right? There's 0% chance that she hasn't seen the jokes at the, like, this is the meta. When all else fails, just know that Susan Collins is going to say that she is extremely alarmed or severely concerned or troubled by whatever the Trump administration is doing. Now, will she vote against it? No. What are you, stupid? She already said the thing. Say the line, Bart. I'm extremely alarmed at the Trump administration. Insert new thing that they did. That's it. That's what you can always expect Susan Collins to reveal how concerned she is about insert new fresh hell the Trump administration has brought about. Amazing. He joined the board of directors of Advantage Therapeutics in 2023, a pharmaceutical company developing treatments for neurodegenerative conditions. His former firm, Mithril Capital, invests in various healthcare ventures. Other alarming and extremist projects. O'Neill has served on the board of an organization that seeks to set up floating cities. I shouldn't be laughing because, like, these guys literally don't need a floating city anymore. They just have America. Oh, O'Neill once introduced. Friedman has said, Seasteading Institute is a Thiel-backed organization founded by Milton Friedman's grandson, Patry Friedman. Friedman has said the Institute's goal, I envision tens of millions of people in an Apple or Google country where the people would not vote, but rather companies would govern in what Friedman called a successful dictatorship. O'Neill once introduced Patry Friedman at the Thiel Foundation event, saying, if I want to predict what I will be thinking a year from now, I just ask Patry what he's thinking today. O'Neill appears to share the Thiel's obsession with anti-aging and potentially even achieving immortality. Thiel himself has advocated for injecting blood from younger persons as a part of the anti-aging process. This is real. Blood boys. J.D. Vance may or may not have been one of his blood boys. O'Neill's public comments have not gone so far, but he has strongly advocated for medicines and technologies that purport to reverse aging and spent time as the CEO of anti-aging nonprofit SENS Research Foundation. Senators should decline to confirm Jim O'Neill as Deputy Secretary of HHS. Of course, Susan Collins is concerned, but it's cool. That's all you need to know. O'Neill voiced, during the COVID pandemic, O'Neill voiced public support for unproven treatments that were not supported by scientific evidence, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, as well as vitamin D as a supposed prophylaxis. Amazing. Here are some of the former CDC leaders that resigned after the head of the CDC was fired.
I think that, well, first I want to say one thing in response to something Dan said. So I think that an important thing to ask the secretary is, has he been ever briefed by a CDC expert on anything, specifically measles, COVID-19, flu? I think that people should ask him that in that hearing.
What would the answer to that be?
So the answer is no. So no one from my center has ever briefed him on any of those topics.
Really?
So I don't know where he's getting his, really.
No one has ever briefed him
on
on any of those issues that you just mentioned there, including.
Bro, while all this is happening, if Trump fucking dies this weekend and then JD Vance becomes president and the Peter Thiel dictatorship is imminent, I will lose my goddamn mind. Here's Laura Rosen. Trump has no public events scheduled all weekend. Don't believe he was seen today either. JD Vance says he's ready to take over as president if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy with Trump. I jokingly talked about this yesterday, or I tweeted about this yesterday as a joke. I said, well, he did kill the Pope after all. And, turns out, who knows? Because, like, on the one hand, you're like, oh, sweet. It'll be so sweet. It'll be so glorious. On the other hand, the alternative is JD Vance, which means that the freak Peter Thiel has succeeded in the hostile takeover of the entire American government. Oh my God. Holy moly. JD Vance is a wet blanket, zero charisma. It don't matter, brother. It don't matter. That only matters during the election cycle. That don't matter if there is if there's a takeover, like a constitutionally approved second in command takeover of the administration. Yeah, he's a wet blanket. He most likely can't drum up support from the same Trump forces when he's running for president, but maybe he doesn't have to run for president. That's the worst outcome. Because, like, JD Vance is one of the only people in the admin that knows how stupid Trump is, okay? Like, he's smart enough to recognize how dumb Trump is, but he's just such a massive brown noser that he wants power more than anything else. And he is Peter Thiel's blood boy. Straight up. Hell.
Measles, given the outbreak in the United States right now?
He's getting information from somewhere. Yeah, he's getting information from somewhere, but that information is not coming from CDC experts who really are the world's experts in this area. Like, folks from around the world call us with questions around these infections. And we are seen as the expert. CDC is seen as the expert in these areas. CDC is the preeminent public health organization, I'm going to say, in the world. And he's not taking us up on several offers to brief him on these very important topics.
Why do you think that is?
On the issue, I don't know the answer. Perhaps he has alternate experts that he may trust more than the experts at CDC that the rest of the world regards as the best scientists in the areas.
I'm not sharing this to scare people, though it's terrifying. I'm sharing it because we all need to be on guard. We won't be getting reliable data from the CDC anymore. Worse, the guidance could be harmful. RFK Jr. has no medical training, no scientific background. What he does have is a track record of pushing conspiracy theories rooted in eugenics. Dr. Demente Daskalakis, who ran the CDC's immunization and respiratory division, is out.
I'm seeing CDC being transformed into a weapon where people are not allowed to share scientific data, and that scientific data is potentially going to be contaminated more and more with ideology. Secretary Kennedy put out a directive that changed the childhood immunization schedule and also the adult immunization schedule for COVID-19, making it more restrictive for children. That means limiting access, by the way.
Yeah.
So making it more restrictive for children and also for pregnant women. And I'm never going to forget how I learned about it, which was on Twitter. So I was sitting in a senior leader meeting. I am, one of the COVID experts, one of the vaccine experts, and at a senior leader meeting at CDC, my phone blew up, and it was people saying, "We didn't know that you changed the vaccine schedule."
So many people will unironically look at this and be like, "Good, you're a baby killer anyway. You made my son gay. Oh, we're so cooked. We're so cooked. Bro. This is so unimaginably cooked. Holy sh. Oh my God. Okay, that's cool. That's what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? Nah, nothing.
And then they said there's this video online that you can see, and that's how we learned about it. And then we had to ask for, can we get some paper? Can we get something in writing so we can figure out how to implement this directive, since all we had was the video? We eventually got the paper, and my job as a scientist is to say, can we also see the data? Mm-hmm. That led to that decision. And that data was never provided to CDC. Measles, obviously, is something that he has said a lot about. I have no idea where he's getting that information, but it's not from CDC experts.
You say eugenics plays prominently in the rhetoric being generated. I think anybody who's been paying attention would agree with you. But from your perspective, tell us more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole rhetoric behind the movement that Secretary Kennedy thinks that he's launched is really that only the strong survive. So whether it's cutting social programs that are important to children, whether it's cutting access to food, so making America healthy means good food. So cutting things like food benefits for children seems like it's not a really good idea to be able to achieve that end. He has this belief that sometimes infection is better than vaccine because it creates, I think, the people who survive are the people who should continue to propagate the species. I'm never going to forget, there was an interview that he did at a restaurant talking about the importance of using beef tallow in French fries. And in that interview, he was talking about his desire to have avian flu burn through chickens. And the chickens that survive, they're the ones that should be bred.
Dude, I can't begin to explain to you how dangerous this stuff is because it's invisible. Okay? This is the last remaining aspect of the government that is always supposed to work, because you're supposed to take for granted the government working behind the scenes to ensure that your food is not poisoning you, okay? What I talk about all the time is like, you don't know that these things are constantly on, okay? These regulatory agencies are constantly at work. And yes, there are significant failures even in that process. But the only time when you do actually remember that they are supposed to exist is when they're not working, when they fail, okay? But their failure oftentimes is invisible. Okay, their failure is invisible until it's not, until it's impossible to avoid that reality. What I mean by this is like, you don't know when you go to the store and the food that you are eating has not been properly examined or is contaminated. Okay, and you don't know that until a fuck ton of people do eat that food, and then people start falling. Okay, people start dying, people start getting super sick. And if the proper warning mechanisms are also diminished because they're run by these deregulatory Peter Thiel-backed psychopaths, then no one knows about it. And then more people keep consuming the same shit. That's where we're at.
And those are the words that he said. They're available to watch. And he said, because those chickens have the superior genetics. And then 1 minute later, he said that the president also has superior genetics.
CDC cuts back on the foodborne illnesses surveillance program. CDC's FoodNet program is requires surveillance from 8 foodborne pathogens to 2, a move some experts warn could leave the country more vulnerable to outbreaks. What do you say? What do you say to this? What can you say to this? It's just nothing. It's cooked. It's all cooked. It's smoked. It's done. It's over.
Not how our children are supposed to look.
Concerns are spreading beyond the US as well, given the CDC's global role in vaccination guidance. Today, the government here is announcing that a chickenpox vaccine will be added to the measles, mumps and rubella jab from January next year. But already, only 83.7% of 5-year-olds have been given both doses of the MMR, well short of the 95% global standard.
Never forget that the major reason why there's so much like anti-vaccine conspiracies against the MMR vaccine was because Andrew Wakefield literally wanted to sell his own vaccine. So he just lied about the MMR giving children autism. Okay. Like that had his own vaccine. He had a competing product and he wanted to sell the competing product. And that's the reason why he just made up a bunch of falsified data riddled fake evidence to suggest that MMR would actually give people autism. And that's where that comes from. A guy who just wanted to sell his own vaccine, who was just mad that the MMR was effective. So if you hear someone say like, oh, vaccines do autism though, right? Like, which is something that RFK is saying, something that Trump has said in the past as well and continues to say, that's where that comes from.
So what effect might a shift in US policy have on public sentiment here?
It's gone full circle because it came from one of our doctors who was struck off, who's now very prominent in America.
Yeah, Andrew Wakefield. She's literally, British doctor Andrew Wakefield, who had his medical license taken away from him because of the thing that I just described to you. Of course, he came to the United States of America and has a wonderful career as an anti-vaxxer, an anti-vaccine skeptic, a vaccine skeptic, and you know, lives in like a mega mansion and shit.
Yeah. And very influential, and naturally across both sides of the Atlantic, you know, lots of conversations happen. And I think we are influenced by American culture as much as many other countries are in the world. So yeah, I think lots of the misinformation has stemmed from there.
This month has already seen reported real-life consequences of vaccine skeptic messaging. A gunman firing hundreds of rounds at the CDC building in Atlanta, Georgia, killing a policeman, then himself. All of it contributing to what is reported to be a bleak, even tearful mood inside the agency. Its incoming acting head has been named as Jim O'Neill, Kennedy's deputy at the health department, seen as likely to bolster his boss's moves on vaccine reform.
All right, here we are in the bowels of the Pentagon for the Pete and Bobby Challenge.
Earlier this month, Kennedy, a proponent of testosterone as well as blue jeans when it comes to workouts, took part in a fitness challenge with the defense secretary, 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups. If so far his tenure has been characterized by this sort of bluster and eccentricity, in the coming weeks, the consequences of his decisions on public health may start to hit home.
Yeah, it'll be complicated, all right, as I covered earlier. Very complicated.